I better make this good or I won't ever get another chance to do this. So we looked like many other families when we started coming to MDU-UC in 2005 or so. My partner Troy and I coming with our 4 oldest kids who ranged from 3 to 13 at the time. I would love to say that we came because we needed a spiritual home for the kids, but we actually were doing okay raising our kids as pagan at home and attending shared community gatherings around the East Bay. We entered these doors because I was in my early 30s and I needed a spiritual home. I had been living in a non-traditional relationship for almost 10 years at that point, and I realized if I went back to the Catholic Church that I'd been raised in, I would have to hide who I was, and I could never bring my whole self to church. I realized I'd have to live a lie, so I went on a search. I needed a religious home where my family wouldn't be condemned or ostracized. I wanted a church home, a place that would welcome me with all my flaws. So I wound up here at MDU-UC. I'm glad I did. Over the last 13 years, MDU-UC has grown and changed, and as has my family. Now my oldest is 26, and my youngest, who was born in late 2005, is in the middle school program. It was rather fortuitous that I ended up here, you see, rather than trying to shoehorn myself back into my old Catholic ways. As my kids have grown up, my kids have also encouraged me to explore more about what it means to be part of the LGBTQIAA+ community, as they prefer that I call it. I have family members that identify with various parts of the rainbow family, including being trans, non-binary, genderqueer, pansexual, bisexual, demisexual, asexual, queer, and other self-identifying labels, including being straight allies. I have needed to learn from other families and others in our community about the struggles and supports that exist around us, so that I'm prepared to be there for my family. My kids are willing to teach me, but I don't want to look too dumb. I appreciate the knowledge I've gained through the Unitarian Universalist classes our whole lives that I have taught and that my kids have taken. Having the words to use correctly and to understand creates an easy way to have a shared dialogue. I wish that everyone could take the Our Whole Lives classes that my kids took. And in fact, there is a young adult, and there will be an adult and a senior adult Our Whole Lives programs coming out, and I'd love to get training for it and have it here at our congregation at some point. I have unfortunately heard some people say it's too difficult for older people to learn all about these new genders and pronouns and sexualities and so on. And what I have been asked to do when I fail to use the correct pronoun or the correct name or the correct sexuality for a person is to just keep trying again and again and just keep doing it. If we listen, the kids and the youth will teach us and lead us on this path. Our youth and our young adults are also more multiculturally diverse than our general membership in this congregation. These younger generations include families that were not historically UU, but that are looking for a new religious home. We know that young families have lots of needs that we want to meet, and this is the perfect time to set ourselves up to meet them. After all, these new families, if they stay, will be part of the foundation of MDU-UC in another 10 years or 20 years. They will be the people up here as worship associates or in the classrooms teaching Our Whole Lives. Let's just not tell them just yet. Let's let them get comfortable before we spring it on them. And to do that, we really have to let our young adults and young families get comfortable here. Luckily, we have the amazing Indigo and Marina to help with the young families and getting the kids involved into the amazing children and youth programming that we have here at MDU-UC. We need to make sure that we serve the needs of the young adults, both with and without children, as they come out of our youth programming. And here is where the rest of us come in. It is the job of the rest of us to figure out how to do this. We need to reach out and invite people in. I know it's sometimes hard to do. You see, I'm a natural introvert. Now, some people don't believe it because I can talk up here without a problem. No sweat. But calling someone I don't know on the telephone makes my mouth go dry and my hands shake. I can have a casual conversation at coffee hour with people, but find it hard to figure out what to say after 2 or 3 minutes. Do I continue with inane chatter, or do I go deeper? Which is less terrifying to this total stranger? Sometimes I feel like words are just falling out of my mouth and I have no control over what I'm saying. All I can say is that if you see someone with a red cup, make a connection, take a chance, chat and invite them in. And even if they don't have a red cup, if you see someone standing or sitting alone, go over and join them. Make a new friend, even if random words fall out of your mouth. And when you are outside the walls of our congregation, it is even more important to invite people in. When was the last time you invited a person to come to our Sunday services here? Have you ever done it? Maybe we should do a reward system called the Bring a Guest program for discounts on donuts, or wait, better yet, a reserved parking spot. How many free things would you get? We should give bonuses if the guests aren't related to you, and for each decade they are different than your age. Can you imagine asking someone, who would you invite next week? Would you feel comfortable inviting someone who has a different culture or race than you are? What work we need to do before you could say you would do this easily? Would you be willing to ask someone to go vote with you if they lived in your area, or if one of you voted by mail? According to a Brookings Institute article from November 21st, 2016, approximately 50% of millennials, those 18 to 29 at the time, voted in the 2016 presidential election. 50%. And things are even worse than that. In midterm elections like those that are happening in just a few weeks, only 25% of young adults have said they are definitely going to vote. And that's actually a great number, considering that in some recent midterm elections, the actual number of young adults voting was as low as 12 to 13% of the eligible young adults. I want that to sink in for just a minute. Think about your friends, or your kids, or your nieces or nephews, or your grandchildren. Who do you know who is in the 18 to 29-year-old range? Do you know anyone in that age group? Do you know if that person is going to vote in November? Now, if that person is here today, do not ask them at coffee hour. I was taught that is what is called shooting fish in a barrel. The only ones that can get away with that are the parents and grandparents of young adults who are all here together. So I know that you guys can ask. But just think, if each of the 500 members of our congregation convinced 2 people to vote, maybe even asked them to go vote with us, or made a pledge to send pictures of the I voted sticker to each other via text. Maybe we can influence some of the midterm elections in some way. And think about your relatives who live in those states. that are borderline red and blue. Maybe we can make this world a more just and caring place for all families, including those who are fleeing their own nation due to fear of violence or poverty because of being pansexual or trans or simply being a woman. Do people know you feel this way? Are you ready to welcome people that are entering into the United States, no matter what their heritage or culture or race? What if they are Mexican or Latinx or West African or Afghani? Do you think that Walnut Creek is a welcoming community for immigrants? How could we as a congregation make it a more welcoming place for people to be? What can we do? Who can you talk to? Who is one person who you could talk to and maybe help change their mind to be more welcoming? Most people's minds aren't changed by posts on the internet or signs on the corner, but by conversations. Who will you have a conversation over coffee with this week? Our congregation has stated that we want to be multicultural. We want to welcome into our space the experiences of other people and their cultures and families. One of our Make It So 2020 goals is to become exuberantly multicultural. In my mind, this doesn't imply that we're going to see Reverend Neil skipping joyously across the patio, scattering rose petals and crowing triumphantly about MDUUC being successfully multicultural at long last. Not that that doesn't make a great picture in my mind, but rather that we are going to be continuing our path towards appreciating and understanding the various cultures with openness and enjoyment. It means to understand that we have heard a lot of the stories that centered white heritage, and it is time to hear the stories that center other heritage and enjoy them as well. This means when we purchase novels, we should consider purchases that are written by people of color. Maybe we should go see the movie that was suggested by Linda Russell, Blind Spotting, that focuses on the gentrification of Oakland, especially since one of the leads and co-writers is a person of color from our area. I will also do my best as a worship associate to ensure that I use fewer stories from places that traditionally center whiteness, such as the Christian Bible and the Greek and Roman mythos, and promise to defer to stories from various indigenous peoples on the other continents, especially when I'm talking to the youngest people inside our walls. So what do I hope for the future for MDUUC? I hope that each and every child and youth in our congregation finds that their needs are met by our congregation, whether that is through RE classes, working as a child care provider, becoming a volunteer in the garden, or through some other ministry. I hope that we have a strong young adult group that finds a way for our youth to transition easily from our religious education classes into our congregation as a whole. I hope we continue to have a vibrant number of families that are fully engaged, both kids and parents, in a wide variety of activities that allow them to participate together and enjoy the company of other families as they deepen their religious experiences. I hope we have an even larger number of activities for those people who are single or in relationships that choose to not have kids or whose kids don't live with them. I hope our seniors continue to feel well and truly supported and loved. I hope the generations get to know each other even better than they do now. In the future, I would love to see an MDUUC where the youth and the adults interact fluidly with one another, and where people of all generations feel free to volunteer for ARIA events, whether or not they have a kid, just because they love the atmosphere. I'd love to see the youth and young adults volunteer to help older adults in some way that is meaningful to both generations and doesn't feel artificial or coerced in any way. In general, I'd like us to be a little bit more like my kids, especially Jake, who I'm pretty sure almost everyone knows because they talk to everyone. I also hope we welcome in more stories, more songs, more traditions, more things that we just don't recognize. If you don't know what these new things are, feel free to ask. There is nothing shameful about respectfully asking a question, as long as the person hasn't already been asked 20 times. Oh, and also remember, if you can Google it, don't ask the person wearing, preparing, or doing it. Listen and watch and enjoy the experience. I would love to see an MDUUC of the future where we have more things, where we invite in other cultures and traditions and share with them. Things like the Passover Seder and the Ramadan dinner and the winter solstice ritual. There are many more ways we can enjoy the culture of those around us. We just have to be willing to step out of our comfort zone. Together, holding hands, knowing that we have already taken the first steps, we can take this journey towards a multi-generational, multicultural, religious community.